here. Okay, so it is 12:31. We are going to go ahead and get started and make sure that we are optimizing our time. Again, this is Launching Science in the 25-26 school year. As a reminder, to get credit for this course, you need to log into PD&E and register. So you will get 3 credit hours for registering, and that's all we need from you is to just register for the course, and we will get you credit. So I want to start off by introducing my amazing team. So my name is Kristen Luthi, and I serve as the Director of K-5 Science. With me, I have Mr. Brandon McKinney, who is our K-5 Science Instructional Coach, my amazing Program Assistant, Elisa Malone, who is our K-12 Program Assistant, and then also Brenda McDaniel, who is our Green and Healthy School Rep and supports you with all of your gardening and composting needs. So for our quick agenda today, we're going to start talking about instructional calendars and pacing guides. We're going to dig into high quality Tier 1 instruction, and then we're going to chat about resources. So hopefully you have noticed that we have brand new instructional calendars for the 25-26 school year. So in about February, we sent out a feedback survey to all of our schools. Teachers gave us lots of feedback on the instructional calendars, and then based on that feedback, everything was updated. So you can find the instructional calendars multiple places, but on the main Comm Center page, there's an instructional calendar button that looks like this, or on your grade level page, you can click instructional calendars and that will take you to the 4th grade instructional calendars. So also updated this school year was our pacing guides. And so we have a multi-step process for reviewing and improving our pacing guides. So like I showed you just a second ago, Brandon and I are a mighty 2-person instructional team. And so we rely on curators. You probably have a science lead or a curator within your building. And so those teacher leaders come together and we do design thinking and think through what is best to support the needs of the teachers in Gwinnett County Public Schools. We also look at data from milestones and district assessments, and then also just getting feedback from teachers. So your voice matters. We have a brand new button that is on our Comm Center. And throughout the school year, you can give us feedback on pacing guides, but also on our resources. So on that main science page, you are going to see a button that looks like this. And when you click it, it is going to take you to our K-5 Science Resource Feedback form. There, you're going to add your name and your school, your grade level, and then we're going to ask that you provide a link to the document you're referring. That way I'm not hunting through everything, trying to figure out what your feedback is for. Then you can give us feedback on pacing, on the resources, if there's a typo, if a link doesn't work. All of that feedback is going to be collected in this feedback form. Then we're going to ask that you provide details of your feedback in this very last box. So know that we want your feedback back, we value your feedback, and you can give us feedback throughout the school year through this feedback form. Now we're going to get to the fun stuff, high quality Tier 1 instruction. So when you're thinking about high quality Tier 1 instruction, I want you to think of 3 words. We want to anchor our student learning. We want students to talk about science, and then we want our students to do the science. So that's what we're going to focus on this year with high quality Tier 1 science instruction. Anchoring, talking, and doing. Okay. So you may have noticed on our pacing guides that we have 5E model lessons. Now the 5E model is not new. We've been using the 5E model since 2017. We just cleaned it up a little bit this school year based on feedback and put the icon so that you could see what stage you are doing, okay? So we have engage, explore, explain, elaborate, and evaluate. New this year, we have 5E key task and slide decks that are available for every AKS. So we're going to take a look at what those look like. So again, the 5E model um, is not new. These are things that we have been doing. So starting with engage. So when we engage our students, we're going to annotate our learning targets. We're going to do the notice and wonder protocol with the phenomenon, which all are pros at. We've been doing that. You're going to co-construct vocabulary with your students using the word catcher strategy. Again, that's not a new strategy. When we are exploring, you're going to do that tinker time, which you guys love. It's every time we're out at schools, we get to hear about how amazing tinker time is. We're just calling that explore. Then new this year, based on feedback, you guys gave us feedback that we needed to do a little bit better with our explain portion. And so updated this year in the 5E lesson plan is the explain portion. So we'll talk through that in just a second. We have elaborate, which are those critical thinking and literacy mini tasks we've done in the back. And then new this year is a quick check. So we're going to chat about that too. So this is the brand new updated pacing guide. I just snipped a piece of it. And so you can see we have our AKS, we have our learning targets, we have the 5E lesson plan, and then we have the formative quick check. So new this year are the 5E lessons for each indicator, new formative quick checks. We also have new vocabulary cards, new review games. So for this one, it's a Jeopardy review game, and then updated assessment items and level of text. So based on feedback, we just updated those a little bit, added a few more pictures to make them better resources. Now, you will notice that for each indicator, there is only one 5E lesson. That is our very best thinking around that AKS. Your students may need more, and we encourage you to use the additional resources that are listed in this gray box to support the learning of your students based on what they need. But we want you to start with the 5E lesson plan, and that can be the very minimum that you do for each indicator. Then you're going to give that formative quick check, and based on that, support your students where they are. So again, the 5E model for teaching science. We're going to start with annotating that learning target. We're going to engage our students through the notice and wonder protocol. We're going to co-construct vocabulary with our students through the word catcher strategy. We're going to get our students to explore through Tinker Time. We are going to explicitly explain, and we are going to elaborate and evaluate through those formative quick checks. So annotating the learning targets, you can see these are some pictures out in the wild of teachers who have annotated their science learning target. And when we think about annotating our learning target, it increases our student achievement, it increases our student engagement, and then it also enhances student ownership of their learning. So they know what they're learning. It's really hard to learn something or do something when you don't know what the expectations are. We also have great news. These are embedded examples in the 5E lesson plans. So this is an example of what it looks like in the lesson plan. So if you're not quite sure what you need to pull out of that learning target, we have examples in our 5E lesson plans to support you. Then we're going to engage our students through the phenomenon. Again, this is not new, just a few additional supports to support you. So in the engage section, you will see an example notice and wonder chart. So it walks you through the progression of how to do a notice and wonder chart with your students. So starting with, what do you notice? What do you wonder? Then getting our students to identify whether it's an open question or a closed question, and then refining those questions. Again, we have those examples in the 5E lesson plan. So if you're not quite sure how to get your students to refine their questions or what questions they should be asking, this resource will help you through that process. And then co-constructing vocabulary with our students. So we have been using the word catcher strategy for quite a few years in Gwinnett County for science instruction. And so updated this year, again, are those word catchers. So you know how to use a word catcher with your students. This is one of my favorite quotes. It's actually from WIDA. And it talks about how science concepts are captured in a web of related information, not a word. And so in order to get our students to connect a word with that web of information, they have to have experiences with a phenomenon and by connecting it to similar or related words that are already known. The word itself conveys and holds relatively little meaning. So it reminds me of our Natalie Wexler work with building knowledge that we talk about with literacy and how knowledge is Velcro. And in order for knowledge to stick for our students, we have to Velcro it to that existing knowledge. And so the word catcher strategy is great for doing that. Again, it's going to show you that progression. What does a word catcher look like at the beginning of my lesson? What does it look like as we begin adding words to it? And then this is our final word catcher where we've gone back and we've developed that meaning with our students. Again, in the lesson plans. So when we have annotated our learning targets, when we have done the notice and wonder protocol with our students, and when we have done a word catcher and started catching those words with our students, we have began to anchor our learning, okay? Now we have to get kids to talk and to do the science. So when we think about our Tinker Time activity, that is really where our students are going to engage in those collaborative conversations and then when they're going to start doing the science, okay? In science, we believe that students need to explore before the teacher explains. So we've gotten a few questions already where teachers have said, can we move the explain before the explore? And the answer is no. We really want to make sure that we are following this process because when we follow the 5E model, our learning is systematic, sequential, and cumulative. Okay, so we want to make sure that we give students the opportunity, again, back to that web of knowledge to explore before the teacher explains. Okay. Then we get to the explain phase. So in our 5E lesson plans, you are going to see that explicit instruction. And so it will literally say on slide 15, this is your teaching point. This is what you're going to tell students. And then we have explain slides to support those teaching points. So again, new, refreshed this year is the explain portion of our lessons. We have new pieces of our slide decks where we are giving students that explicit instruction through the explain. Last but not least is the elaborate and evaluate section. So during elaborate, that is going to be those critical thinking tasks, those literacy mini tasks that we've always had. And it's where students are doing the science. This is often through the lens of the science and engineering practices because those are what are embedded in our standards. So during the elaborate phase, students are developing models, they're planning and carrying out investigations, they're answering and refining questions, engaging in arguments from evidence. Okay. And then after they have had the opportunity to elaborate on their learning, we want to evaluate them. So again, this is new this year. There are quick checks that go along with every indicator. They're about 6 questions long, and there is an answer key on the next page for teachers. So again, the 5E lesson plan is the minimum, right? We want you to engage your students. We want them to have the opportunity to explore. We want to have the opportunity to explain, to elaborate on their learning, and then evaluate. Now, based on the evaluate phase, you will notice that this is circular, right? You might have to go back into those pacing guides and pull some of those additional resources if your students don't have it yet, okay? And so that's why those additional resources are provided for you. So when we do the entire 5E lesson, we have engaged our students, we've gotten our students to talk through those collaborative conversations, and then we've gotten our students to do the science. We are also super excited. If you've been playing in our 5E slide decks, you will notice that we have the QSSA strategy for meaningful interactions within our lesson plans. And so again, the lesson plan is going to tell you step by step how to do the QSSA. And a QSSA is just an enhanced turn and talk, okay? So you're going to start with an open-ended question. So you're going to ask the question, that's the cue. You're going to have students give you a signal. So it could be a thumbs up, hands on my head when you have your answer, so that independent thinking time. Then you're going to provide students with sentence stems or a starter. Then you're going to have students turn and talk. Then you're going to assess by either calling on a few students, having a whole group discussion, or you could have students write in their science journal. You could have them do write on a sticky note, but some way to assess their learning so that you can look for those misconceptions, okay? So you will see QSSA embedded in all of our 5E lessons. So let's chat about instructional resources. When you go on that main 4th grade page, you are going to see your instructional calendar. You're going to see science and engineering practice supports. You're going to see science and engineering practice supports for multilingual learners. You're going to see learning targets and vocabulary. That's where you're going to find those vocabulary cards. And you're also going to see the K-5 Science Leader Toolkit. So that has extra information for our science leaders, okay? When you click on your grade level page, you are going to find, again, the instructional calendar. You're going to find your pacing guide, your analyzing the standards documents, and your sample assessment items that have been updated. When you click on your pacing guide, you are going to have buttons that look like this. This is where you're going to find, again, the analyzing the standards documents, that sample assessment item bank, your text sets, so text passage for each indicator. We rolled those out last year. We have updated them this year. They have some new cool pictures on them. We have our learning targets and vocabulary. 4th grade and 5th grade have access to STEM scopes and gizmos as our board adopted resources. So when you click on this button, it's going to give you additional information on STEM scopes and gizmos that are aligned to the AKS. Possible material lists. So what are your students going to need for each unit? ML supports, and then science and engineering practice resources and launch lessons. Also new this year, we are so excited. We are rolling out new CLT toolkits. And so when you click on your main page, you will see this button that says CLT supports. On the toolkit, you will see lesson plans and pacing information. So pacing guides, learning targets, word catchers, anchor charts, everything you need to successfully plan the lessons. You have information on small group instruction. You have information on assessments, whether it be the formative assessment, whether it be the review game. We have brand new science formative assessment strategies. So if you're teaching and you're like, wow, I need to do a quick formative, what strategy can I use with my students? And then also the sample assessment item bank. We also have a ton of resources to support our MO learners, including that QSSA strategy that's embedded in our 5E lesson plans. So let's talk about science materials. So in 4th grade, you have an everyday phenomenon kit called Movement of Matter. That is going to help you with your habitat units, okay? So when you get to your habitat unit, make sure that you pull that out. You also have access to all of these NSTA book titles. And so for 4th grade, the one about clouds is great. Next time you see a moon is going to talk about phases of the moon. These are just great books to help support your students' learning. And so there are 10 library-bound hard copies in each school. So I would make sure that I located these books because they are great to support the learning of science within your classroom, okay? Then we've also downloaded money to all of our schools to support science materials. We don't want science materials to hold us back from doing high quality tier 1 science instruction with our students. So if there is something that you need, please reach out to your local school administration and let them know, because they do have money to help support science instruction from my office, okay? And then know that we are here to support you. So again, I am Kristen Luthi. I am the director of K-5 Science, my amazing instructional coach, Brandon McKinney. And so as any questions come up, please feel free to reach out to either one of us. So I do want to take just a moment. We've got about 5 minutes left to show you the e-com. So if you did not know, if you haven't noticed, the e-com has moved over to Google Sites. So when you open up the e-com, this is what it is now going to look like. Okay, we have our instructional resources, and then our science office homepages. So I'm going to start with our science office homepage because that's the one that most people don't know about. So this is our K-5 science office homepage. Again, it has our contact information for me and Brandon, and then our office number. You will see professional development opportunities. When you click this button, it's going to take you to professional learning slide decks that go along with whatever PD we did. So if you didn't get the opportunity to come to Science Summer Institute, you can click here and it's going to give you all of the slide decks. Pre-planning will be uploaded after today. So if you need to go back and watch this video, you can click here. We also have a YouTube channel that we are working on getting videos added to. So if you click here, it's going to take you directly to our science YouTube. Like and subscribe. Then if you scroll down, again, there's that feedback button that we talked about. And these are all instructional resources to support science instruction. So those science and engineering practices, the K-5 Science Leader Toolkit, Joyful Learning Resources, FLL. We have digital books of Next Time I See and I Wonder Why. So if you click on this, this is actually digital copies of a lot of the NSTA books. We have science fair resources, classroom science fair project plans, design thinking resources. This is a little bit new, but we have classroom example pictures. So if you ever wonder, what does it look like to see students doing a word catcher? And so we have lots of different examples so you can see what this might look like in different classrooms. So I like to call these pictures in the wild, okay? And so there's word catchers, there's annotated learning targets, but lots of different pictures of different anchor charts, all of the things. So when I'm out at schools, I'm taking pictures and adding them to the slide deck. So if you ever were like, what does that look like? It's a great resource for you. We have our MO learners resources. We have the science and engineering practice vocabulary cards, the progression of our science and engineering practices, and then content vertical progression, okay? So those are all on what we like to call our super secret science page that's under Office homepage. Then quickly, I want to show you the instructional resources for fourth grade. So we're going to click here. You're going to click on science. And thankfully, this is not new to us because we rolled out Google Sites last year. So last year we had brand new Google Sites. They're not new this year for you guys. Here you're going to see the grade level instructional resources, the CLT toolkits, our amazing curators that help support this work, and upcoming professional development. When you click on your units at the top, and you click on your pacing guide, this is where you're going to find your lesson plans. And so it has the DOE resources. Look, y'all are already in there. Setting up your classroom. So how do we set up those classroom expectations around the science and engineering practices? So this is a great day one lesson. We like to call it Unit 0. We have our AKS, our achievement level descriptors. Again, I told you about the text sets. So these are for all of the indicators. And we did use AI to make sure that they were Lexile level appropriate for your students. Too many buttons open. Oh, here we go. Learning targets and vocabulary. That's where you're going to find those vocabulary cards. We have a launch lesson on developing a model because that is the first AKS that we are going to do this school year, which is develop a model to support an explanation of why the length of day and night change throughout the year. And then we have our 5E lesson plan. So this is where you are going to see your slide deck that goes along with it, those updated learning targets, phenomenon, QSSA, strategy, the sentence stems that go along with it, the engage portion, the explore portion, which remember is our tinker time, and then the explain, which is going to be that explicit instruction for our students. Okay. So thank you so much for your time today. We appreciate it. Please feel free to reach out to me or Brandon if you have any questions, and we hope you are off to a wonderful school year. Thanks, guys.